Thank you, Mr. President, and I also thank the distinguished chairman of the committee. And I want to say about the chairman that I do believe that he made very credible changes in the original budget proposal by saying he would not sign on to many of the even bigger spending items that went over the 10-year period. I think that this budget has some redeeming value. And I appreciate his leadership because it's very difficult when you have the president of your party and Congress also with leaders from your party trying to say you've got to do this. It's hard sometimes to reconcile all of that together. And so I appreciate that effort. I'm speaking against the budget resolution today because I think that the overwhelming parts of the budget that are unacceptable outweigh the few good things that were done. Talking about reconciliation, which was just the subject of conversation, reconciliation, of course, is the procedure that is used to completely wipe out the minority's opportunities for input. Maybe we'll have input, but no Republican amendments will pass. On reconciliation, you do not have the ability to filibuster at all. And while reconciliation is not completely allowed on the climate change, the report says it is assumed that reconciliation will not be used for changes in legislation related to global climate change. Now, I'm going to take the chairman at his word, saying that global climate change will not be subject to reconciliation because it is very important that we have amendments. One of the amendments that I had on this budget bill that was taken out by the conference relates to the energy portion of the bill. So not having reconciliation and taking away the ability to filibuster in the climate change bills that will come later is a positive. However, reconciliation is in the health care part of this budget, which means that health care reform and the single-payer system that has been proposed by the President and the leaders in Congress is in reconciliation, which means there will be no opportunity to filibuster or possibly have input, certainly no leverage by the minority. That is in the health care section of this bill, which may be the most important one that affects people's lives. We know that health care and our system of health care in America is the best in the world. There may be a few other countries that have equal access to private choices and doctor choices and the ability to choose what hospital and the type of care you're going to get and the kind of insurance coverage you get. There may be a few other countries in the world, but I'm going to just say that I think it's best in America. And I know that the countries that have gone to the single-payer system, which takes the private sector largely out of health care, takes the choice out of health care, ends up with a system that allows people to die while they're waiting to have the procedures that they need that they would have in the United States of America within a week. So we have that in this budget in reconciliation, which means it's a 51-vote bill. That in itself is enough for us to vote against this budget. But there are other reasons as well. We know that our nation is in the middle of an economic crisis, the likes of which none of us have ever seen. And yet we are looking at a $3.5 trillion budget resolution that says basically to the American people, we know you're struggling. We know you're trying to make ends meet. We know you can't get loans from the bank. We know that your small businesses are struggling to stay open, but not the American government. The American government is growing. It is getting bigger. It is going to be a burden that is going to be beyond what we will be able to bring back or contract if we can get through this economic crisis. So while the American people are proving their resilience in the face of hardship, we are seeing the American government grow as if we had all the money in the world to spend, which we don't. So we are now looking at an unprecedented growth in government in this country, with a $3.5 trillion budget on top of a $1 trillion stimulus bill, on top of a $410 billion omnibus appropriations bill, all of which has been passed in the last 100 days in this country. The American people know that this increase in government spending is not free and it is not sustainable. The American people will be forced to pay for it. It is a short-term gain for a very long-term cost. It will double the public debt in 5 years. In 10 years, this budget will triple the American debt. Now, the distinguished chairman, Senator Conrad, would not allow this budget to go forward for 10 years because he saw that debt and he had the integrity to say no. So it's 5 years. Hopefully, when this passes, because it is going to, despite our objections, hopefully in the next 2 years, if we can see the economy coming back, the people with integrity in the majority will say it is time to start reversing some of the debt that has been created, get these deficits down, and give our country a chance to recover for the long term and not hand our children this debt. Because if we go on with this budget as it is today, that will presumably be passed by Congress today, because the House has already passed it, it will create more debt than every president from George Washington to George W. Bush accumulated. More debt than all of the presidents of our country accumulated over the next 10 years. In 10 years, this budget will spend nearly 4 times more in interest than on payments in education, energy, transportation combined. That's staggering. That is staggering, Mr. President, and I would urge my colleagues to think twice before they vote for this bill, because reversing it will be very, very difficult. There are some good parts of this budget. One is, I want to commend the Majority Leader Harry Reid, because he did take the lead in making permanent the state and local sales tax deduction, something I have worked on with him and with others in this body that represent the 8 states that do not have a personal income tax, just to get equity. Senator Cantwell, Senator Murray, myself, the senators from Tennessee have all worked tirelessly, along with Senator Reid and Senator Ensign, to rectify the inequity that has plagued the 8 states that do not have a state income tax, but they do have sales taxes. What the Majority Leader has led the fight to do is to allow those 8 states on a permanent basis to deduct our sales taxes from our federal income taxes, just like all the other 42 states in our country are able to deduct their income taxes on their federal taxes. So this all started in 1986 with the 1986 Tax Act, when the sales tax deduction was eliminated, but the income tax deduction was kept. So since 1986 until 2004, we had that inequity. But we corrected it in 2004 with the efforts of many of us, and thank goodness we've had extensions every year. Now we will make it permanent. That is a fundamental issue of fairness, and I commend Senator Reid for his leadership. However, my amendment to permanently eliminate the marriage penalty, which was adopted by the Senate, was taken out in conference. And I think it's the most egregious anti-family tax that we have in this country today. The marriage penalty costs the average American couple about $1,400 a year. Now, we, in the plan that is before us, did not make that relief from that tax permanent. We've had it since the tax cuts of 2001 and 2003. Again, we have been extending that tax cut year after year after year. I hope to make it permanent, but we were not able to do that. So what's going to happen after 2010 is that the marriage penalty is going to come back in full force for those who make over $200,000, many of which are subchapter S corporations. They are the small businesses that create jobs. You know, we have a common goal. President Obama and the Democrats in Congress and the Republicans in Congress all want to create jobs. The problem is the policies that are put forward in President Obama's budget and in the one that's getting ready to pass is that it will hit with tax increases the people who will create jobs by increasing their tax brackets, by increasing the marriage penalty on them. Mr. President, we should follow our goals with policies that will achieve them. But instead, unfortunately, we are going in the opposite direction. The Outer Continental Shelf. Here's another example. President Obama said in the campaign, and he has said since, we have a goal of energy independence for America. Energy independence for America. 60% of our energy needs are imported from foreign countries. Countries that do not want us to succeed. Countries like Venezuela. Countries in the Middle East. We are importing our energy needs from countries that would like to shut us down. So we have a goal. It's a common goal, once again. Democrats and Republicans, energy independence for America. But we are taxing the only energy source in this country that actually produces enough energy to make us independent. And that is drilling on the Outer Continental Shelf. If we would open exploration and give every state that allows that exploration a part of the royalties, we would encourage safe environmental drilling on our shores using our natural resources for our common goal of energy independence for our country. But no, the amendment that the Senate passed was taken out of the conference report that would have encouraged the expansion of oil and gas production on the Outer Continental Shelf. It has been shown by the drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, which is today our largest source of oil on our own shores, the largest source, and we have not had an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico drilling in years, ever actually, ever, because we know how to environmentally safely drill, just like we could do in ANWR, where the people of Alaska want to be able to drill in a very small frozen tundra in Alaska, where we would have an even bigger resource than the Gulf of Mexico that would make our country energy independent, and yet that too has been shut out. Mr. President, we have a unique position in the world, and that is we are the only country in the world with abundant natural resources that could produce our energy independence in an environmentally safe way, and yet we refuse to use those natural resources. Other countries in the world fight for natural resources that we have in abundance but are unable to use because we have shut those down. Every one of us in this body believe that wind energy is great, that solar energy is great, that we need to do more research and technology to allow the storage of wind and solar power so that it will be more available on a 24-hour, everyday basis. We want more technology to learn how batteries can increase their capacity so that we can have electric cars that can run for a long way. We want those things, but not at the expense of environmentally safely using the resources we have, like nuclear energy, for instance, which is the cheapest form of energy in this country. It's also the most environmentally pure. There are no carbon emissions from nuclear energy, and yet once again, the Democrats have refused to continue the loan guarantees that were put in the legislation from 2005 that encouraged 17 companies to apply for nuclear power plants to come online, which we haven't had in 20 years in this country. We could supply electricity, as France does, environmentally safely, efficiently, and it could be done because we gave incentives for those credits that back up, and yet today we've had such a great outpouring of interest, we can't cover the loan guarantees with what we have in the budget, and we tried to amend it in the omnibus appropriations bill to provide that so that those nuclear power plants could continue in the process, the regulatory process for environmental concerns, and we couldn't get the amendment on the bill that would provide those incentives, without which they will not go forward. Once again, a policy that says energy independence and a plan that shuts down one of the sources that would make us environmentally safely energy independent. So, Mr. President, there are so many parts of this budget that are wrong, and I hope that, if for no other reason, having reconciliation in health care and adding $3.5 trillion to our debt, giving us deficits that are unable to be stopped as far as the eye can see, those are the reasons that we should say no. Go back to the drawing boards and bring us a budget that tells the American people, we get it. We know that a big increase in government is not in a family's best interest that is struggling to make ends meet and stay in their home and either keep their job or produce jobs for others. This budget will not do that. And I hope the majority will listen to what we are saying. Mr. President, defeat this budget, and we can, in a bipartisan way, come up with a plan that will be good for America and that will give America confidence that they are going to have an economy once again that will create jobs and good incomes for their families. Thank you, Mr. President.